Let's get an outlook for the space with Olumide Akindele. He's the head proposition and liability at Diamond Bank. Thank you so much for joining us, Olumide. Now, markets closed higher yesterday on the back of the financial services sector and consumer goods sector, starting with the banking space. Now, do you think this can be sustained to the end of the week, despite the lull we have seen in that space lately?
Yeah, I think very good question. I think what we expect to see is probably a flat out for the rest of the week. We've had a very volatile week, up on Tuesday, down on Wednesday. I think we expect this to happen in the markets, given the fact that most of the banking sector stocks are reacting to sentiment in the market regarding banks' performances and the regulations in the CRR, which is the cash reserve ratio. So I think what we'll probably see, which obviously the week ending tomorrow will be a very low, flat position going forward.
All right, well, let's quickly touch on the consumer space. Now, the food and beverages sector was also relatively quiet. Now, that space was dominated by Dangote Sugar, Nestle, UTC, Honeywell, and NASCON. Now, what's your outlook for the sector going forward?
I think we expect to see good, strong growth going forward as we move towards the end of the year, the festive periods, and the demand for consumer brand goods will obviously rise. So we don't expect any surprises in that area. We expect that to see a steady growth year to date in terms of the consumer type brand goods.
All right. Well, according to a recent report done by the FBN Capital, it claims that the number of Nigerians with access to financial services has increased to 60% from 40% in 2007. Now, do you agree with this survey?
I certainly most do, because if you took reference to the existing customer, the existing banks and the customers at the moment, we've had a huge increase in customer numbers. That's not necessarily new customers, but what has happened is that most banks have increased their customer base. Plus, if you add the advent of mobile banking and most of the technology that's driven access to some type of financial access over the last 2-3 years, I will probably say actually the FBN is right in terms of growth. In fact, FINA in the last report also reported a growth in access to financial services going forward. So we largely agree with the report, and we expect it to grow over the next coming years.
All right, well, let's also touch on the cashless policy initiative. I mean, according to the central bank governor, on the average, 30% of branch physical space and employees are devoted to cash logistics. Now, with this study in mind, how has the initiative, worked in terms of penetration into other states in the country apart from Lagos?
I think the policy has worked to an extent, bearing in mind that we are fully business as usual in Lagos, and the CBN announced earlier in the year to actually roll out to some other states like Rivers State and Abuja and so on. But I think what has happened is that the CBN has learned from the past of what has happened in Lagos and have rolled back a little bit, aligned more logistics and more thought to be passed on through most of these states. Remember, most of these cashless will also ride on technology, ride on most of the things that we're required to do. We expect that the policies, as they grow, as they come over the next couple of months, we'll see more activity in that area, and I believe the cashless policy going forward will be very effective.
All right. Now, one of the reasons for this policy, as we know, is to reduce the cost of banking services and to improve the efficiency of monetary policy. Now, if you were to review the effect of this policy, how effective would you say it has been? The CBN, in terms of the monetary policies, the CBN has come up with quite a few regulations this year. It's done the banking industry in terms of the new guide to bank policy in terms of charges for customers, the push on financial inclusion strategy, the cash reserve ratios. I think it's early days, and we're beginning to see the effect as the banks begin to readjust into this new regime of regulation. It will still take a little bit of time to see how we see the full impact, but already we're beginning to see gains from the consumer point of view, where things in terms of the rights and the charges that most consumers do pay in that space. Also, on the bank side of things, the cash reserve ratios has already gotten most of the banks to start to think, okay, well, we really need to actually grow income or revenue or interest income from somewhere. So we need to kind of put our imaginative thinking caps on to find ways of revenues going forward. So I think largely, you know, the policies are effective. They're very early days, but we expect to see some huge impact going forward.
Now, moving back to the equities market, what's your outlook, and you know, what sectors should we be looking out for at the markets?
I think the banking sector as well as the consumer brand sector also are the two big areas we want to look for various reasons. Obviously, the consumer, we're still a very high consumer trended country, and we expect to see, like I said, you know, the demand for this ongoing. So we see some stability in that. On the banking sector, I think things will stable out once we now know with the rules on CRR and the rules on the charges. I think what we'll see that the banking sector will settle down and begin to actually return to normal profitability as expected.
All right, well, staying with the banking sector, what are the stocks, you know, you think will outperform in the last 3 months, you know, left this year?
Well, it's a close call. I mean, the big banks, you know, the strong banks will also still perform because there is room for improvement in terms of the interest income. So the normal 5 banks will continue to show rate of returns in there. But also, I will also look out for the smaller banks where, you know, they're aggressive. They're taking market share from the big banks, and we see likes of, you know, the likes of Fidelity, Diamond, FCMB banks where, you know, there is scope for growth in terms of, you know, interest income going forward.
All right, then. Well, I guess that's we're going to have to leave it at this point. Olumide, I've been speaking with Olumide Akindele. He's the head proposition and liability at Diamond Bank on the market. Well, that's where we leave it from the Open Exchange West Africa team.